So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
I want to talk about news, don't want the drama. From no pretentious media Madonna. I found me a great ganja mama. Cannabis and coffee with Tamarijuana.
Good morning and welcome to Cannabis and Coffee with me, Tamarijuana. It's a beautiful day in the East Kootenays, and I'd like to thank, first of all, Jim Melvin for my new intro from the Royal Kush Band. Really appreciate that. It's been, 3 years with the same intro, so now we've got a new one. I'd like to mention a few things this morning that are going to be coming up. We have 420 this weekend, I guess, across the country. If everybody's going to be going out to celebrations, please be safe and mindful while you're out there. Even with legalization, you realize that public smoking can be a problem in some areas. I'd also like to mention that Herb Couch, a great activist that we have had for educators for sensible drug policies, has passed away. Herb was a great activist. He was also a primary school teacher for many years out of Nelson, BC. He ended up succumbing to brain tumor cancer, I believe it was, and there will be a memorial for him May the 11th at the Prestige Hotel on the lakefront in Nelson, BC. I will be there, and I'm hoping that if anybody else can get there, his wife Kathy has extended a welcome to everybody. So if you can make it to Nelson for May the 11th for Herb's memorial, that would be something else that you might be wanting to do. Let's see what else I've got on my list here today. Of course, we were hoping to get Caroline Todd on the line. She's in Australia, so we're kind of waiting for her to pop in. But this morning I do have May Moon with me. Good morning, May, and Dennis Bosivert. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice and sunny in San Diego.
I bet it is. I bet it's nice and warm down there too, Dennis.
Yes, it is.
I can't say it's not too bad here. I mean, we're coming into spring up here. Well, you just got back down to California because you were just up in Vancouver not that long ago, too. So you got to see some of the bloomings that's going on up there.
Yes, I did. And also San Diego, because we've had some rain, has had some record flower production with wildflowers.
Yeah, because it's pretty dry, and the wildfires and stuff that you guys get in California are pretty horrendous, considering, same as we have in British Columbia, but it gets pretty horrendous down there in the summertime for wildfires and such too, eh?
Yes, especially if you had a spring like we're having now, where you're going to get a lot of growth and you get more tumbleweed and that kind of stuff. But they're learning not to fool around and basically get a lot of equipment out very quickly and don't let the fire grow out of control.
Yeah, because that would affect the crops down there for cannabis too, right? Because a lot of people do grow outdoor Northern California. So that does affect how the crops are in California for cannabis too, right?
Yes, that can affect. You lose a lot of grows out in East County because of that. Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's same with here too. I mean, a lot of outdoor grows go on in the parts of this province because of the extended grow factor that we have out in British Columbia here. And the same thing, on the island and stuff when they've got fires. It's something that people have to worry about. And with spring coming in, like I said, we've got burnings and stuff going on right now. But, I mean, let's face it, everybody's getting ready to start planting. So that being said, with legalization coming around this, up here, we have the 4 plants that you can grow in your, per household. So people are popping seeds and getting ready for, the grow season. And, that's kind of exciting for, I guess, some people for, up here, because it'll be the first time legally that we can actually grow 4 plants per household. Now the question is, where do you get your legal seeds and legal clones to be able to grow those plants? Right?
Yeah, that's one of the things always that limited plants bother me, because if you're going to count a plant from the minute it's a pod buster as a plant, there's a lot of things that can happen to plant in the process. So you really need to have, at least maybe 5, 6, 10 plants to start with to be able to sure that you're going to have 4 full plants by the end, right?
Right. Well, yeah, that's always a thing, and you can always end up with a boy in the mix. And I mean, like I said, our federal government really hasn't done a lot of research into actually what this whole legalization ream that they put out. They just threw it out there and went, okay, we'll see how the chips are going to fall. And hindsight, like I said, we haven't had a lot of I wouldn't say arrests per se, but then we've also had somebody not too recently that was charged with, trafficking, and he was given like 10 months for 85 grams. But of course, backlogging on that too, apparently there's previous charges attached, but still in hindsight, that's not legalization if you're going to be going to jail for a plant. That's my, in any sense of it, right?
Well, I look at it as cannabis prohibition's tyranny. So how can you tax tyranny or make tyranny illegal, right? I mean,
yeah.
The state's already so far to the north of what should be that thinking any victory is a victory when, let's put it this way, any law that puts more people in jail as far as I'm concerned is a bad law.
Yeah.
And
you come back and forth quite a bit, so you kind of understand. Right, because you are back and forth quite a bit. So you understand our laws comparably to the laws in the States too, right?
Exactly. Well, the whole enforcement system is a little bit different, but also the punishment is different too. You don't get life for cannabis in Canada. You can in the States.
Yeah. Yeah, and that hasn't changed much, even with the states legalizing. Like, that's a question I have to ask too, is, with each state legalizing, whether it's medically or recreational, like Denver, have they taken the laws out? Like, have they taken those off the books, or are they still sitting there just not being enforced?
Like anything that has to do with the courts, it's complicated. But basically, the Department of Justice has specifically in their budget they can't go after legitimate medical marijuana patients. So out of choice, the federal government hasn't gone after them, or let me rephrase it, because they don't have the funding, they can't go after medical grows. But the states are regulating it so that they have also the commercial grows, which by the grace of the federal government, nobody's really gone after yet. So it's still a political hot potato in reality. And you still can get busted. And that's one of the problems with complying. And then the only other thing is, how does the state, this is true of Canada too, how does the state justify making money off of illegal gains and taxes? I mean, if it's illegal, if it's proceeds of a crime, then how does the state justify taxing it?
Right. I agree with that, because in hindsight, you can't tax proceeds of crime. Right?
Well, on April 1st, 2014, they made it that you had to pay taxes on marijuana sales, and it was ridiculous.
Right.
So the hypocrisy is just so mind-boggling and ignorant, and then you look at the corporations that's made money out of this and basically changed cannabis into being the new excuse for slavery by incarcerating people in the country, and the whole prison industrial complex, which is equally scary to the military industrial complex. And here I am talking like an old hippie.
But it's the truth. In hindsight, oh, excuse me, but nothing has really changed over the last 30 years, even with the new laws and with prohibition supposedly being lifted. It really hasn't changed that much when it comes down to the bottom line.
Yeah, that was a nice thing about 215 is we had just gotten to the point where the medical cannabis angle was figured. A lot of people went to jail over getting it massage for the courts. A lot of sleazy dealing and wheeling and dealing. And then all of a sudden the Proposition 64 passed, corporate marijuana, and that's now started a whole level of bureaucracy in the state that is still amazing. And on top of that all, it hasn't expanded where you could open up. It's still left everything up to zoning laws like is happening in Canada. That was the big thing that the other side has figured out, that the way to restrict it is with zoning laws.
Right.
So
now, has there been has there been raids and stuff going on? Because I mean, here we're hearing, like Hamilton, like we were talking to, before the show, that's where Al works a lot out of, that they've been really going after the illegal shops. And like, is there a lot of raiding going on in California too, still continuing, or like, because even up here, like even with legalization, if you're running an illegal shop, they're still going in and raiding and charging people.
They do. It's a bit more civil now, because what happens, people will open up and hopefully they make money before they come in and get raided. But the first stage is they'll send them a notice that they're not zoned to where they are and they have to cease and desist order. And then at that point they'll raid them. So it isn't like, kick in the doors. And those have been hard lessons. There was one, and it was over the internet, but in one of the beach communities, the cops came in and smacked out the cameras they could see, but then didn't hit the cameras that were hidden, because this going in and smashing and grabbing was a policy of the police, and I don't think so much anymore. I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh, well, that's good. I mean, accountability, right, even for them. Because when it comes down to it, I guess when they are illegal shops, I guess it doesn't matter whether you're legal or not. Like, police, they can get away with doing whatever they want, because it's pretty hard for you to go and report things when you're not on the legal side of things either, which has made it really difficult, I think, with transitioning into the legal market for a lot of people, is that the regulations have made it difficult to get into the new system to begin with. The cost of getting in, the wait time. Like, I know here in British Columbia, I think we only have like 3 or 4 legal shops. Cranbrook itself has actually approved 5 stores, but in hindsight, there's only one that looks like it's even moving to open the door, and that's the one through the LCBO, which is the liquor board. But that being said, like, the way they've got it, you really have to have a fair chunk of cash to be able to sit and wait for them to process your application. And that's, I think, which is so discouraging to so many small business owners, because that's, basically who starts these small dispensaries to begin with. It's somebody with very little cash capital, somebody that's willing to help people. It's a small business, startup. So who's got $500,000 to sit and wait 9 months or longer? Because, like I said, it was, when did we get this? April 1st was in Ontario. But I mean, BC's had the ability to have legal stores for going on 9 months now, and we've literally got 4.
In the States, with the new law, you have to be bonded. So then you have to come up with a $500,000 bond or $1 million bond. So, I mean, how much does that cost you a month to maintain a bond?
Yeah.
For your
yeah,
license?
I mean...
And then you got your local zoning laws. Like one of the operators, the city building department was insisting that he puts in bulletproof glass and fortifies the walls. And the only thing they didn't want him to fortify was the doors. Do you know why? They want to be able to get the doors, and the rest is just to spend money.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You're gonna do anything, fortify the goddamn doors.
Like, good grief! I know, it's just it's it's almost the hypocrisy, right, of how they want it to be. And I mean, let's face it, like we've all been doing this for a long time. We've just been wanting to help people feel better. I think that's what it is, bottom line, for a lot of us, is we just wanted to help people feel better, and now it's become this corporate rat race that a lot of us don't even want to be part of anyways. Like, I'm to the point, I just don't even want to be part of it. Like, I will continue to do what I do, as far as, my show and everything else that I do, but I'm never going to try and get into this legal market. It's just too much red tape, bureaucratic BS, and I'm just not down for that. That's not what I got into this for.
No, at all. It's not respecting the plan either.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, like Asia too, like May, with the magazine and stuff. I mean, the magazines, we can't even work within our own realms anymore. Same with trying to do this cup, like trying to get sponsorship and trying to do the things that we would have done like even 2 years ago. It's like pulling teeth from anybody. And it's not like we don't want to, but people are still scared. Like even the crafters that are trying to get into the legal market, they're not going to want to come and put their entries into a cup because they're looking at the legal market now. So you can't do anything outside of being within the perimeters, which entails not sponsoring anything, not advertising anything, not entering anything.
That's why I can't print 12 High Chicks in Canada, because we have such strict advertisement laws that I could end up facing, I think it's like $250,000 per ad, and I have 12 girls and there's 12 ads. So I have 4 kids. I don't have that kind of money. I sell the books for, basically what the cost of production is.
Right. And so that's where, I mean, like even with the show, like trying to get sponsorship for advertising for my show. Like, I mean, it's not that people don't want to. It's like, are we, and I mean, sure, being an online, it doesn't really restrict us because we're not within Canada, we're international, but it still puts that question mark beside everybody else. And of course, being scared. Do you want to put your name out there? Not being in the legal market. If you put your name out there, then you take the chance and the risk of not being able to get into the legal market. So it's a really like double-edged sword, and to actually what you can and can't get away with if you ever want to get into the legal market, right?
And then factor in, all you have to do is run across a bureaucrat that's had a bad day and decides that you're going to jump through a dozen hoops.
Yeah, exactly. Or
Really?
decides that he doesn't like the way your business plan is, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's so many variables as to what and what. So.
Yeah. It's still the Wild West. It's interesting, all the actors now that are getting into the cannabis business and the politicians. That's just crazy. And my daughter sent me an article today that apparently Carl's Jr., which is a hamburger chain in the United States, is going to offer a CBD burger.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
In states, I guess, like California, yeah.
I guess it's a plant-based burger, right? Kind of like the sausages we have here. Plant-based, right?
A pinch full of this. There we go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's too the controversy between, CBD and THC and how much the restrictions are going to be for edibles up here too. Like, I think it's like 0.03 milligrams or some topped off at, and for CBD, I don't know. Like, they just got them such ridiculously low. We've talked about this before. You'll be a beast before you'll actually get any relief, from the levels for edibles that they're proposing for up here. Like I said, it seems like it's a continual,
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I know things are going to change, right? I mean, we know things will wax off. We were hoping anyways, but it still doesn't necessarily open the doors for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Even the patients now, or people that, use cannabis for medical purposes, are being thrown under the bus. So, we've got charter challenges going on across this country right now, and, another one starting here next month in Red Deer, Alberta. So another, something that people should be aware of, that Sean Howell is going to court next month in Red Deer on the, cultivation for patients, and then ends up, where it's been moved forward. So that's something else we want to kind of keep our eyes on, because it is a charter challenge. And I'm not sure what the outcome of that will absolutely do for patients until we get there. So that's another thing to keep our eyes open for. There's other ones going on in Nova Scotia as well, too. I mean, Heidi's still fighting for the dispensary out there as well. So there's so many, court cases that can, and that's where we end up. We always end up back in court.
Yeah, it's all make work for lawyers. That's what I say. You pass bad laws, then you have to have the courts decide what is reasonable and what isn't reasonable when we all know it isn't reasonable.
Well, yeah. I mean, not having charter, at least here in Canada, we've got some sort of charter, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And you've got, down in the States, you've got your amendment there, too. But, I mean, Australia, for example, even though we haven't been able to get Caroline on the air, because I'm not sure, maybe her alarm didn't go off, but they've got no charter in Australia. Now, you guys are heading down to Nimbin for Mardi Gras, May 4th through 6th. So maybe you guys, Dennis, you've been down to Nimbin before as well, too. And I know, Asia, you've been down there. This is, your 5th or 6th year in a row kind of thing?
Oh, I've been going to Australia since 1997. But going to actual Nimbin and Mardi Gras, it's been, my first trip to Nimbin would have been 2009. And then my first trip to Mardi Gras would have been, I think, 2014.
Right. So why don't you guys tell the listeners what you're going down for and what you're doing, so we can kind of bring Caroline in even though she's not here.
Well, it's a huge festival that they have annually. It's been going on for, I think it's just under how many years I am alive. Everyone kind of from all over Australia that's into the hippie lifestyle and marijuana, they kind of all gather together in Nimbin and they celebrate for a weekend, and they have speakers from fun places all over the world. This year they've chosen some Americans like Dennis and our friend Adela, and how do we say her name, Dennis? It's Elvie, but how do we say the last name?
Mashiko.
Yeah, it's quite but she was one of the very first American marijuana patients, and she gets a container of joints sent to her every month, which is pretty cool.
She was on a federal government program that goes back to Jimmy Carter era that is still operating, and there are 300 joints a month and a 10 can, and she can legally smoke anywhere. She's exempt from the federal regulations.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Alice O'Leary, who is the wife of the gentleman who bought the federal suit that allowed all this to happen, is going to be there speaking too. So the old guard is going to be there talking to the old guard.
Oh, that's excellent. Maybe they can get some progress going down in Australia too, because I know they've been fighting pretty hard down there for a long time to get medical and any sort. And I mean, in Australia, things are progressing a little bit, are they not, Asia? Well, maybe we lost her.
No, I'm here. Just sorry, I had my son running in here with some markers, and I didn't think you guys wanted to hear him go, markers, so I muted it, and I was like, oh, quick, I got to hit the button. Things are definitely progressing. People are talking about introducing a charter in certain states. I'm not entirely sure how far they've gotten with that, but Australia was originally founded on a colony of prisoners, if I'm not mistaken, and they were actually brought there to harvest hemp fields, which I thought was pretty interesting. I learned that a few years back. But they didn't get a Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they were sent there with no rights, so they didn't bother to give them any, especially to their children or grandchildren. In this case, great-grandchildren. It's gone on for quite some time. But it takes, progressive minds to get together and start, making change happen. And they have a very complicated electoral system for politics. They have something called a preference system, which is, like for us, when you make a vote, like that's it. That's who you voted for. That's where your points go. That's where the money goes. Where there, you have to decide who you'd want to win if you didn't like the other person, or if your person number one doesn't win, and you have to put in these different numbers. I don't really know how it works. To be honest, I'm slightly dyslexic. So to have that all in there makes it super confusing, but it makes it very hard for new party members to get in the door. And that's why change is so slow there.
Yeah. And like you said, they don't have a charter like we do. So that gives them no ability to move and change things like we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if something goes wrong and they get arrested, they can't just go, oh, well, I have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we'll go and fight that in court. There's no way to fight it. That's it. You're done.
Right.
And their idea of a trial by jury is you can only get a trial by jury after you've been convicted by a judge, and then it's in a part of the appeal process. So now think about it. Now you're already been convicted. Now you're going to see a jury of your peers. They're already, you got 2 strikes against you because everybody thinks, well, he was guilty once.
Right.
That's the idea of fair.
Well, I know, even talking to them when they were here, like just, trying to understand how things were in Australia, like it is pretty complicated. But I mean, I think when it comes to cannabis, I think we're so, I don't know, I guess disenchanted, not, what's the word I'm looking for? Desensitized, because we've been so involved for ourselves personally for so many years that we just don't even think about breaking law, walking around with a joint, jumping in our like we just don't think of these things. But in Australia, they have these roadside tests that are just random and they're not accurate, as we already know this, and people are getting false positives, and then because they have no charter down there are really being raked over the coals in the court systems down there. That's what I've been hearing too, right?
Well, first of all, I think it's kind of evasive to require scraping your tongue, which is the same thing as swabbing, because that's now the presumption of guilt. So yeah, I have a whole problem with that concept, and that's one thing that so far the Bill of Rights has protected us from. But breathalyzer test and that kind of thing.
Well, even ours, we've got one here, I guess, now that a girl in Manitoba is going to challenge the driving impairment because she went through a whole rigmarole of testing and then, came back not impaired, but they're still saying she is impaired. So there is a girl in Manitoba here that is going to challenge this. So that'll be the first one coming into, up for Canada already, which isn't really that, far into legalization. It's within the first year.
See, in California, they left intoxication rated by your doctor, but also the medical board in California forbids your doctor to say how much cannabis you can take. So there's a catch-22. So
it doesn't make any sense.
Because the argument that depending on you as an individual is where your intoxication level is, and really if you're intoxicated on cannabis, you're not going anywhere anyway. So that basically there's no desire to get behind the wheel and drive. So
yeah, that's the truth. Like, it is the truth. Like, people don't want to drive when they're, like, I know I don't want to go anywhere if I've been smoking too much, or, I wouldn't say too much because there's never too much. But on that note, let's take a quick break, and we'll thank my sponsors, who are 12 High Chicks Magazine, Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partner Society, the Haley Rose Foundation, and MUM, Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana. We're going to hear One Puff by Marky Lyrical. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Chong, and you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Wednesday is an action-packed day here at 420radio.ca. At noon Eastern, we get things started with Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarijuana. Then at 3 p.m., the doctor is in. We can catch the Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price. Finish up the evening at 8 p.m. with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with myself, Al Graham, and my rotating joint hosts. So don't forget to tune in on Wednesdays, when we can catch these live shows and their guests only here at 420radio.ca.
Hey, yo, Rhythm Wise. Check out Red My Eyes. Oh, yeah. I want big bump off the ganja. But in the rhythm and the bass, I move, yeah. But all the people say, Hakuna Matata. But now, worry, ganja, so Colombia. I want big bump off the ganja. But in the rhythm and the bass, I move, yeah. But all the people say, Hakuna Matata. But now, sunshine and storming. Oh, the sun, yeah, it bound to shine. When the meds, I go bless my mind. Oh, yes, I tell me a roll it. No tobacco, me just can't spoil it. Me have to keep the thing nice and clean. And I don't worry when me walk my skin out with a clean heart. Yeah, we never stress. I got me slowly, so me pass out the test with a clean heart. Yeah, we never stress. I got me slowly, so me pass out the test with a one big pump puff of ganja. And the rhythm of the bass I move, yeah. And all the people say Hakuna Matata. Now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. One big pump puff of ganja. And the rhythm and the bass I move, yeah. And all the people say Hakuna Matata. But now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. Oh, I remember when we used to trim the herb to get dollar. And got enough cash from me finger. Oh, it's better than cash from the grower. When you burn it up, you walk a little slower. So make sure you are go pass it to the dealer. I saw him not care, him happy how him feel. When the ganja tuna play, the man say, with a clean heart, yeah, we never stress. Check out me slowly, so me pass out the test. With a clean heart, yeah, we never stress. Check out me slowly, so me pass out the test. With a one big pump puff of ganja. And the rhythm at the bass I move, yeah. But all the people say Hakuna Matata. But now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. One big pump puff of ganja. And the rhythm at the bass I move, yeah. But all the people say Hakuna Matata. But now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. I beg you listen, overstand me, man. We're not so sure about the legalization. From when we was a youth, me pay about 10 bucks a gram. And still today, me pay the same and no inflation. And if the government have run the taxation, then pack it up like cigarette contamination. I mean, no one knows cyanide in me sensei. No chemicals or when me burn me blueberry and with one big pump puff of ganja. In the rhythm of the bass I move, yeah. All the people say Hakuna Matata. But now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. One big pump puff of ganja. In the rhythm of the bass I move, yeah. And all the people say Hakuna Matata. But now worry ganja smoke alone, yeah. I don't read them wise. Check or read my eyes.
And we're back with Dennis and Isha, or me, Mooten. We're just talking a little bit more about why we were still not getting Caroline on, but I guess Australia has quite an issue with their Wi-Fi connections too, so we were talking a little bit about that over the break, but we'll get back to talking more about Nimbin. So, Isha, you've been to Nimbin for the Mardi Gras Unspoken in the last few years. It's really out in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? It's not like the city. It's not like, going to Sydney, is it?
No, so most of their homes don't even have flushing toilets. It's like a big hippie kind of commune, most of the area anyways, and then they have these really interesting kind of like off homes that are, I don't know how to describe them, but they're not like our homes. They've got like kind of that rippled metal kind of roof because the environment's so warm. Their winter is our summer temperature. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely beautiful, though. They have people that literally show up with no shoes on to do this event. But yeah, it's like the middle of nowhere, basically. There are people that drive in now, but I think it opened up during the 60s or the 70s. It was during the Aquarius Festival. And all these hippies came down to do this big festival. Yeah, and, some of them just didn't want to leave, and they decided they would buy up the land, and they did just that, and here it is, God, that's like 60 years later, and these people are getting up there. My goodness. And they have children now that are about my age, and it's all kind of transforming a bit, but it's a beautiful city, and I can't wait to go back again. Or I guess it's called a village. It's not a city, it's a village. And it's quite funny because as you enter the village, there's a sign that says there's no alcohol. And then you see all these people like, doing mushrooms and smoking weed. And it's like, well, that's interesting. But there is a pub in the community. They have some very interesting named streets. They have Rainbow Avenue and I think Rainbow Street, was it? And the electric company is the Rainbow Electric Company. And it's just really bright and really beautiful and very entertaining. That's for sure.
That sounds like so much fun. I know you see the pictures of all the, fairies and everything. And we were, like I said, blessed to have them come over here for a couple of our events too, to bring Australia to Canada and let us kind of learn about what their systems are like and what they're doing over there too, which is always really super interesting. It was always great to hear their stories, because there's also like Francis and Francis and Murray and Kendra as well that have been over here from Australia, besides Caroline. And Tamara Simmons was also with Caroline when she came last time. So, it's always good to have them come over and learn about us and us to learn about them.
Hands across the water, as it were.
Well, yeah, it is. And for them to be so far away, because that's what people have asked me, like, why Australia? And I guess it's just the general connection that they're so far away. Right?
We're also a Commonwealth country like Australia. I kind of think it's crappy that if you're a criminal, you got sent to the most beautiful, warm country on earth. And if you weren't, you got sent to this cold rock called Canada. Here you go.
Yeah, right?
But the connection is they're essentially the same settlers, except they were the ones that got caught for their crimes, which is unfortunate, but that's the way life goes sometimes.
Yeah, and that's exactly how Australia was, I believe, settled by prisoners, but the thing is too, like, it's petty crime, right, that people were sent away for stealing and stuff. It wasn't like, and murder too, I'm sure, but, and what they've come, where they came from to where they are now. Like, I mean, let's face it, they've had a lot of diverse things changing as they move forward. And with cannabis legalization, I think throughout the world, they will end up getting, somewhere ahead down there too. It's just a matter of time.
They're getting pretty progressive. They're talking about medical marijuana. They're using medical marijuana. There's just not a lot of patients. There are people that are outsourcing it, having it brought in from Canada, which I find very interesting. It's all done legally, of course. I'm sure there's people that are doing it not legally, but the ones that are posting all over the internet, because their laws are so strict, do have permits, and it's really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. It is, like I said, to see the permits, that they've actually opened that up, because what was it, 5 years ago, there was no way in Australia they were going to do that. Now they're there, so...
I've not seen any permits for grows, but I've seen permits for like oils and tinctures that are coming from like our licensed producers, which I think is cool, and weed. Really? I would think it'd be better if they were getting good weed, but that's better than no weed.
Right. Absolutely. Like, it's better than nothing, right?
Murray sent me a news article from New South Wales, where apparently the New South Wales government is operating a grow in a top secret area and learning about the plants. So they're probably going to want to break into the commercial market for fun and money.
Well, weren't they over here actually at one point last year? I think I read something that some representatives from the Australian government had come over to speak to licensed producers and the BC government here. So, I think that maybe, it might not be publicized, but they might be, like, they're seeing what's going on here. Same within the States as a corporate, money entity, like it's taxation. It is, exactly what they think it is. Big corporate takeover where you can make money off it and tax the shit out of it and make money off of it, right? And let's face it, that's what we've got. Whether we like it or not, that's what we've got. Legalization is just one great big corporate capitalistic, money-making wheel. And we all kind of knew that that's what they were going to do with it. It's unfortunate. But I can't see any other country not seeing that, not wanting to grab onto that either. That's just, my take on it.
No, exactly. It's all about greed now.
Right.
Now that they realize they can't deny that it has a medical purpose, so they're diluting it, making it recreational. I mean, really, that psychologically it's a good move. You know what? The masses all of a sudden realize you've been keeping a medicine that could have cured a lot of stuff and kept the opioid epidemic from happening.
Well, speaking of that, it is a day of action today for the opioid crisis, and there are protests and And marches going on all across the country today because of that, and yesterday in Vancouver, because of the opioid crisis. And I think that's one thing that people aren't aware of, that they, back before Prohibition, cannabis was in a lot of our medicines, and they have been lying to us. And we all know that, right? Like, we're not oblivious to the fact that they've been lying to us for 60 years, 70 years about medicine. And in hindsight, it does work for some people and not for everybody. It's just like anything else. Like an aspirin might work for somebody and an aspirin might not work for somebody else either. So you can't label it non-being medical just because it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody trying to make that argument with me, but that somehow you could label it for not being medical because it doesn't work for some. I just don't get that at all. Actually, I saw a prosecuting attorney ask the defendant, "What is it like to be high?"
But there's no, yeah, and what would be the answer to that? There isn't one. Like, do you like to feel good? Like, that's, that would be my response to that. Like, do you like to feel good? Well, that's high. Like, what's high? I don't feel high. I smoke cannabis. I'm not getting high. Do I feel better? Yes. Do I function better in life? Yes. Am I high? No.
Well, the other thing I like to point out is what's wrong with being high. I mean, you go to church to be high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you go to drink wine to be high, right? So the one thing that makes you high with a minimum of side effects is somehow wrong.
Right.
Tell me where the logic is in that, please.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Don't have any euphoric, happiness in your life because you're just not allowed to. That's tyranny, right there. No happiness.
Really?
No smell of happiness. That's what it was. We were talking yesterday. The smell of lavender, not the smell of happiness. It was funny. But yeah, and like I said, with that, with Australia not having the ability to really do the research either, like Canada doesn't have the ability, and nobody's doing the research. Like I said, medical, recreational, they're dumbing it down, and that's how I feel about it with medical too, right? They've thrown Canadian patients under the bus, rolled us into the Cannabis Act, made it so that it's even more difficult now to get a licensing than it was before. You have to buy from the licensed producer no matter what. The licensed producers, if you do not buy from them, they will pull your license for medical. Say if you're not buying from your producer, right? So that's basically holding patients ransom because they have no other option.
There you go. Like I said, any law that figures out new ways to put me, well, you just described what? In 30 seconds, 6 new ways you can be thrown in jail for cannabis in Canada?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Really? So how's that us evolving? People are being sold a bill of goods, and it's sad. They don't get it.
That's it. They've tried to sell us on this, legalization protocol, I will call it, as and people still feel that way. Like, they feel like if they're not getting it from a licensed producer, it's not reputable. It's not this and that. What do you mean it's not reputable? Cannabis is cannabis. It's being grown from dirt and a seed and a plant, and it's the same. We, as a crafting grower, I wouldn't have access to the pesticides that the big guys have because I wouldn't be legally able to get the pesticides that they're using. So you're telling me that the cannabis that I'm growing is going to be worse than what the pesticides are putting in? I can't even legally possess the pesticides that they're using. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you got crafters and people that have been growing cannabis for 30 years that aren't using this realm of crap they've got going in the licensed production levels because we can't even legally get it. And they're saying that that's reputable because they're using all this other crap on it, right? Like, and then the average person getting fed this bullshit and then coming out of their faces, well, if it's not coming from a licensed producer, it's not reputable weed. It's been sitting in a jar for 8 months. It's outlived its fucking lifespan. It's outdated, and it's garbage. But it's reputable.
Yes, the trouble is ethics. That, to me, doesn't make any difference whether a license or not. You're dealing with somebody that's ethical. You're going to have good weed. You're not going to have to worry about it. because they're ethical. You're dealing with people that aren't ethical, you're going to end up with garbage, but that's what you get, and that's what happens when you want to try and make some sort of deal, and who knows, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to sell it to you for half price. Yeah, well, there's a reason.
Yeah. Exactly, right. So when you guys get to Australia, do you have access to cannabis when you get there? Like, I know you guys can't travel with it because you're not allowed to travel outside the country with even with your medically licensed.
I'm allowed to travel with my NAB loan, but you have
Right.
to declare it at the border or it's big trouble.
Okay, so that's your pharmaceutical, whatever prescription kind
It's
of
like
deal.
a synthetic, version
Right.
of. It's not that great, but when you go like 4 or 5 days without any marijuana and your stomach's really off, it really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to take what you have to take to make sure that you're not going to get sick while you're there, right?
Of course.
That's what I mean. Like, the access you're not going to have to medical over there, and even if you did have it, wouldn't be the same grade or quality level that we've got here.
Oh, no, it's not. Unless you're going to there's a little one. Unless you're going to Sydney or Victoria, you're not going to get that great of stuff. Oh, the dinosaur's cold.
Can you get that kind of, like, can you get good quality in the cities? Like, is it accessible, and what's the cost?
It's accessible, but it's like, $20 a gram.
Yeah. Well, no different than here, I guess, now with legal. I guess, when you think about it. Because,
I guess so.
even if you go into the store here, some of them, I've heard ridiculous pricing here, too. So, but I mean, quality over quantity, I guess.
Yeah, well,
so how far is Sydney from Nimbin? Like, so really, like, where are you
9.5 hours.
Yeah, so it's not
by
really
driving.
accessible, right? Yeah. So it's not like you're going to get off the plane, drive to Sydney, pick up, some decent meds, and then go back out to Nimbin, because it's not possible, right?
Exactly.
Yes, that would be correct. We're going to the hinterlands.
Now, Murray is there. Murray's been to Canada. I've met Murray. And they've got a little store and stuff, and they sell hemp products and that kind of stuff. There's like a little head store and like little shops. They have more than one, or just the one?
There's a bunch of little shops around Nimbin. And downtown and they're similar, but actually the biggest head shop would be the embassy, the hemp embassy, for sure.
The hemp embassy, yeah.
And they
that's
carry.
where they're all.
That's where they run everything out of. Yes. So, yeah. I lost my train of thought.
It's that good California cannabis you're smoking down there, Dennis.
Actually, I'm smoking some Missourian cannabis.
Oh, well, that's even, it's good that, because of the, borers and seeds and stuff that, before it was all, Canadian BC, but the cannabis has really come a long ways as far as quality goes. Anywhere. Like, there's people that grow terrific cannabis all across Canada now, all across the United States now. And that's progress. That's something that's really good to see, because before it was, having to get it across borders and smuggling and all this other crap. Now the seeds are here, the clones can be, passed along, and that makes it easier for everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just think that's great. I think that's the greatest thing about it is that, seeds have been passed all over the world. And I think that's one thing that really, we can continue doing even with this, realm of legalization. We can keep growing. And I want to, pass that on to people. Like, you get the opportunity to grow that plant, do it. Like, it's, it's not like it's some great big woo, but if you have the opportunity to grow your flower, do it. It's something that you'll really enjoy.
For sure. But are you familiar with the United States government program as to being able to recognize plants by their radioactive isotopes?
No. What?
That's part of the concept of registering plants, is that the isotopes can be tracked by air. And I know this sounds like it's science fiction, but they're really working on this project. So they can recognize what species of plant is growing beneath them as they fly over with now a drone, I guess.
Wow. That's really, wow. Like, I mean, you really have to wonder why, though. Why would they go to such extent? Like, what is that plant going to do to you? It's not going to blow up. Like, they make it sound like it's, oh my God, we gotta go find out exactly what that is because it might blow up or something. Like, radioactive, what?
They're patenting different seeds, right? In the United States, that was one of the things Monsanto, now Bayer, was into doing, was being able to patent seeds, so they then can charge the farmer a percentage for this crop. And also, you'll get some drift from one crop to another, and then they can claim another farmer's crop because they are using Monsanto seeds without permission. This kind of stuff's going on now in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's why Monsanto's the evil giant, which gets subsidized by the federal government, too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't follow too much about that. I've got friends that do, but I mean, it's still like, anything that it's all about control, right? Control and money. We know that that's how, it always works when it comes to government, and it's all about control and money. So I guess, like I said, I try to just keep, reminding people that, you do have a little bit of freedom here. You can grow those 4 plants. You can, at least not, you might get fined rather than going to jail. I mean, there are some good aspects to this. You try and, look at positively how, things can be progressively changed in the future. But for now, we're stuck with what we've got, and it's better than nothing, I guess.
No, I agree with that, but we have to keep on pushing. I just like to not, tyranny's tyranny.
Yeah, I know.
Unless you recognize it's tyranny, you can't,
Yeah, absolutely.
You just can't. And I mean, that's what's happening with our governments. It's getting really crazy.
Yeah, well, the Alberta election was yesterday, and the UCP did take that, which is a bit disconcerting. But like I said, they've got 4 years to now do and prove that he's going to do all these things he said he was going to do, and moving oil and moving all this stuff. And like I said, it seems to be changing progressively every 4 years. We've got and that's the thing with Canadian government. At least we can change it every 4 years, but. Like I said, I'm going to go crawl under a rock and not watch politics for the next 4 years because then I, might stay sane. I can't even do it. It's just like, oh my God, I can't even do this anymore, right? But that being said, let's hope that doesn't, because Alberta, quite honestly, has been the province in this country that's actually moved forward more quickly than any other when it comes to cannabis. And they've opened more stores, and they've regulated more private stores to open. So Alberta's ahead of the curve when it does come to cannabis in our country, really. So let's hope that this new UPC government's not going to push that back. And let's hope that they're going to actually just keep working with what is already in place for cannabis in Alberta. Like I said, here we're still, is what it is. It's still a long wait for a store to be opened. It's not private per se. It's all through the government or through the provincial government. So, it's a slow progression. Ontario just barely got their ability to open stores April 1st, and I think they've got 4 in the whole province as well. Only 25 maximum that they're allowed to have in the whole province. Saskatchewan was a lottery, 25 stores too. Manitoba as well, and they're growing. Quebec can't grow. So, it's because of the patchwork framework that Canada does have, this is what we're left with too. So, like I said, it's better than a kick in the ass, but things can change.
Oh, they will. They will eventually.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we were talking code enforcement and who was going to enforce the zoning laws for cannabis and how they should be structured, and the people that enforce the zoning laws actually said the same as liquor stores. That's all we need. We don't need to do anything special for cannabis. Just absorb the regulations we have for liquor stores.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen.
No. And it's not really happening here that way either. Okay, well, that being said, we've got about 4 minutes left to wrap up this show. Is anybody, like I said, we didn't get Caroline on, but I'd like to talk a little bit pass on the fact that Nimbin Mardi Gras is May 4th through 6th in Nimbin, Australia, which is in South Wales, right? So if you're able to get there, Asia's May Moon speaking, Dennis Bosivert speaking, Adela Falk is speaking, Sita Van Windrheim is going over from Canada, from County Met as well. She'll be speaking. What's Elva? Alishka, you'll have to say that, Dennis, for me.
Alvi Mishka.
Yeah,
she's
she'll be speaking as well. So you got some international activists from Canada and the US going over to speak in Australia again this year, which will be very interesting. And of course, they always have their fairies and all kinds of good fun events and stuff going on over there as well. So if you're in the area, or if you can get to the area, that's coming up. Also 420 this weekend, Saturday, across the country here, and imagine in the US as well. Vancouver's having a great big celebration, and so is Toronto. So if you're in Vancouver, Toronto, or anywhere else that's having a 420 celebration, be safe and mindful, and just have a great time. I'd like to thank you guys for both being on. It's really unfortunate we missed Caroline. We'll try and get her back on again.
You sure?
Anybody you want to shout out to there, Asia?
Well, if I could get this kid to behave himself, I think I'd try to. But currently, we are falling off the bed 10 times over. But thank the embassy for constantly inviting me back. I really appreciate everything they do for me, and I'm excited to go back. It's a really great experience, and now that legalization's happened out here, it'll be interesting to actually bring them what we've been experiencing with legalization. When I first went to Nimbin, I went and also saw the 30th Skeptics convention in Sydney with Opus and Mark. And we got to see a doctor named Dr. Waddick that did a presentation on life after Prohibition, and his idea on what life would be after Prohibition and what's actually been for us is dramatically different. And it'll be fun to bring that story to them.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, again, I'd like to thank you guys for being on my show, and my sponsors, who are 12 High Chicks Magazine, Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, the Haley Rose Foundation, and MUM, the Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana. I will try and get Caroline back on the line at some point, but if you're going to be in Australia, the Nimbin is May 4 through 6, and be safe out there for 420 this weekend. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye.
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 So what do you do? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.